All right. Good morning, real closers. Good morning, Gustavo. Welcome back again to Power Hour every Monday, where we go over everything there is to know about virtual assistants, ISAs, VAs. Why do you need them? Why don't you need them? When is a good time to hire them? And today we're actually going to talk about something different, in person versus virtual. Like which one is better suited for your specific business case? What are you trying to do? And how that impacts your business, whether you have someone in-house versus someone who's maybe offshore, maybe a few miles away versus thousands of miles away, right? Gustavo, why don't you tell us a little bit about your personal experience on that regard, and then what you think should work better for someone who's looking to hire their first assistant.
Awesome. And it's a great topic, Roberto, because I run Power ISA. We are a 100% virtual company. So I'm here in my home. This is where I work pretty much every day. And when I have meetings, face-to-face meetings with my staff, it's at a restaurant. We'll go to a conference. We'll go once a year. We have everyone in the company fly in to my city, and we have an face-to-face, personal meeting. It's a few, right? At most, maybe once a month, we have an in-person meeting with my closest staff members, and that's it, right? That's basically what we're doing. If my sales team meets their goal for the month, I take them out to lunch. That's pretty much the only time I'm going to see them, face to face, and that's not every month. Just so you know, they don't crush the goal every single month, right? So there's a few instances where I have like in-person interaction, but it's mostly virtual, right? So I'm a little biased in that sense. But I was telling you before the call, I have an in-person assistant actually, right? She works with me, not full-time, part-time, helping me with content and marketing. Okay. So I have my feet in both worlds. I want to tell people, I'm not religious about it. I'm not dogmatic about it. I see other people in the virtual space saying, oh my God, you don't need anyone. Virtual is 100%. There's nothing an in-person person can do that a virtual assistant can't do. And you know what? My answer is a little bit more nuanced than that. My answer is it kind of depends, because they have pros and cons. Each have pros and cons, okay? If you have an in-person assistant versus someone that's virtual. And here's the kicker, Roberto. You can have someone virtual in the same city, right? I think that's kind of, people can kind of forget that, in the same state, in the same country, okay? You can have a US person working for you. You're in Southern California and they're out in Alabama, right? I mean, I see that a lot. A lot of folks, will hire folks in other parts of the US, lower cost areas in America, in the US, right? They'll hire people. So the same principle applies. When you've got someone in-house versus someone virtual, what's the difference? What's the big deal? And I'll tell you, because I deal with that, we have a foot in each world, even in Power ISA, I have one of my teams, one of my managers, my sales manager, who has everyone in-house. Everyone sits in an office every day, right? Whether they're a closer salesperson or an ISA or even assistant, right? They've got people working in-house all day, every day, right? So, and I've always thought that was interesting. And they have a specific reason that they do it, okay? And I've let it go on because the reason is this, and this is an important difference between in-person versus virtual. They're selling, they're in sales, they're busy all day, every day. They have found that they are more diligent and they ramp up people faster when they're in person, just shadowing the team and picking up on what everyone's doing at the same time, okay? They found that they can just ramp up people much, much faster, and that the quality of the training they get is just superior because they're on the phone making deals every day. It's hard for them to set aside some time to do more formal training. Again, that's not a hard and set rule that no one can train someone in a virtual setting. You just have to be more intentional about it, okay? There's less, that if someone is virtual, they're going to pick up on less in-office conversations. They're not going to be able to listen, probably not going to be able to listen to phone calls that are going on in the cubicle next to them. They probably won't. And I see one team, and this is Club Wealth. Michael Hellickson up in Washington State. They do a really interesting, they're the only team I've seen do this, by the way, at a high level. His whole team, most of his team is also remote, even in Washington State. So they do something really interesting. They open up a Zoom call just like this, and they have everyone connect to the same Zoom call all day. They've got everyone in the virtual room all day, every day, because they said that works for them. They're kind of in the same room all day, every day. They got their cameras on, they're all interacting, they're on a call, they might mute themselves, or they might just go on the call, right? Let's see, anyone wants to listen in, they can jump in. But I think that's kind of wild, right? But I know why they do it. I know why they do it, because they want that kind of we're in the same room kind of interaction. It's very challenging to duplicate that online. So one of my teams has decided to ramp up, train, and manage people that way. One of my teams. 90% of the company does not do it that way, right? Because they understand that it just takes more intention, more time to ramp up someone in a virtual setting. They kind of get that. So that is one big difference with in-house versus virtual people on your team. You can get away with a lot of things that you're in person, right? I don't necessarily think that's always a good thing. You can get away with things. For example, Roberto, attendance, man. Who takes attendance in their real estate team within their office? I mean, no one. I mean, I remember one team in Seattle that had like punch cards, and they got rid of them within a year. Like, this is the worst thing ever, right? Because people would clock in and clock out because their accountant told them to do that. Worst idea ever known to man, right? But other than that, I've never seen anyone really take attendance. When you're in a virtual setting, you've got to do that. You've got to have accountability measures in place when people check in and when people check out, and track them and monitor them during that time. When you're in a house, you can kind of get away with that. Did they show up to work? Yes or no? It's very obvious if someone showed up to work or not when they're in person. When they're virtual, you've got to have some tools and you got to have some accountability in place. As to what kind of tasks can be done better or worse, in-house versus virtual, I think the pandemic taught us that tasks that can only be done in person versus virtual is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And Roberto, I'd really be challenged to tell you, oh, this one task can only be done if the person is in-house, in there with you, versus virtual. It's I honestly can't think of a single task that, some of the tasks will be done faster if they're in person. They're going to find you and get the information that they need from you faster when they're in your face interrupting you. Again, I don't think that's a good thing either necessarily, but they will get some things done faster when they're in person. But is that necessarily going to happen in the house? I don't think so, right? I think that list used to be huge years ago. I think the pandemic taught us, holy cow, we could run an entire real estate team virtually, right? We can run an entire marketing team virtually. You can run an entire ISA calling team virtually, right? The task can definitely be done in a virtual setting. What you need to adapt to, this is the biggest thing people deal with, is how do you manage and hold someone accountable when they're not in front of you, okay? Like I said, you can get away with a lot of things when you are in-house, in person, seeing someone come in, seeing someone leave every single day. You got to have the systems and the tools in place to have that accountability in a virtual setting. We had the same thing happen to us. We were in person in a call center here in Mexico before the pandemic. I had no one working virtual. 0 people, Roberto, 0 people. Everyone was in-house. Accountability, the supervisor could walk down the line and kind of see what you were looking at on your screen. Are you we're playing Tetris or I don't know, solitaire, instead of like being on it and be ready for the next call? What was that? 100%, right? You're doing something else you shouldn't be doing. Were you diligently waiting for the next call? What were you doing? You actually go look around their shoulder and see that. And some guys got really good at kind of switching their screens and moving that around. I mean, there's always ways to kind of, mess up. People would let each other know. They'd have like little, they'd whistle or make a noise. Oh, supervisor's coming down the line. Got to pay attention to the screen this time, right? So there's a lot of things people would do to kind of either supervise and manage in person and work around the in-person management and supervision. But we thought it could only be done in person. I'll be honest with you, I thought the only way to manage a calling team was in person, because people could kind of do what they want. And I wasn't sure the accountability was going to be there. It's a very young demographic, the callers, very young demographic. They're going to get distracted. They're going to be lazy. They're not going to do their job. Okay. Well, pandemic solved that problem for us, Roberto. We went from everyone being in-house to 100% virtual company within a matter of a couple of weeks. From the end of March 2020 to the first week of April, we were 100% virtual. Ahead of the mandates, ahead of the lockdown, we said, this is going to happen, right? We're going to be one of the first kind of companies that are going to shut down because we're all in the same room, breathing the same air and the same AC, right? I mean, come on. Even when it was flu season, everyone would get sick eventually because you're just breathing the same germs all day, right? They said, we're going to get shut down. And what happened, Roberto? What happened? Okay. It was true that there was a certain type of person, certain type of personality that needed the in-person interaction. They needed the in-person accountability. Yeah, that part was true. It was just true to a much lesser degree. It was true to a much, much lesser degree than I thought. 90% of my team transitioned without any issues, 10% said this is just not for me, or we had to tell them this just isn't for you, right? This is not the model that you need. You need something different. Some people felt the walls closing in on them. They couldn't work at home, right? It was not going to be useful, or they had a lot of people at home. They couldn't manage that. There was some cases like that for sure. That's tough. But the overwhelming majority, 90% of my team went to their home, hooked up their laptop, hooked up their computer, and did absolutely fine. Some of their production even went up, right? Their morale went up. They begged us, please never make us go back to the office, please. They get up, throw water on their face, and they can actually get up and do the calls, right? They didn't have to spend 2 hours. Some people spend 2 hours commuting to our call center, 2 hours each way, because they didn't want to be late and miss their attendance bonus. And on the way back, there could be traffic, there could be something. So it could be, they had to bank on at least 90-minute to 2-hour commute each way. And they're like, man, I get all that time back. I'm eating healthier. Like, they would lose weight. Like, they felt like this is like the most amazing thing ever, right? So for us, it was very clear. It was very clear that if we could keep productivity where it was, the transition to virtual was not that big a deal. It was just not, it was a mental issue, a mental block. So when it comes to tasks, I would be hard pressed to find any task that cannot be done as well virtually as it can be done in-house. Biggest difference is how intentional you need to be when training and ramping up someone that is preparing for that work. We had to be very intentional with shadowing, for example. We pair up a new hire with an experienced hire in like a Zoom setting and have them shadow them on their calls. That was the only way we could get them in a virtual, because that's what we would do in person. We'd have them shadow some of our top producers, right? Hey, listen to this person, check it out, right? So you have to be, people have to schedule time, you got to send out you got to do it. You couldn't just show up and be next to them and they might not even notice you're there, right? Nope. People got to be on it. They got to be bought in and they got to understand what they're doing. So that's, for me, that is the game. That is the biggest difference with an in-person hire versus a virtual hire. Doesn't matter whether they're in city, in state, in country, or outside the country. That is going to be the biggest difference that you're going to see, Roberto.
And also, I mean, one of the advantages of virtual assistants, right, is the pool of applicants to choose from. It's even a little
100%.
larger.
100%.
And not only that, I mean, think about it, price, cost, right? We haven't talked about cost is of someone in person versus someone who is maybe offshore, right? Countries like Mexico,
Huge.
Central America.
And it's not just that, right? I mean, people that are trying to hire right now in the US, I mean, it's tough to hire someone right now, right? Let alone, I mean, the cost difference is huge. The cost difference is at least 2 to 3 to 4 or 5 times the cost hire someone in-house locally versus someone virtual. But that's not the only thing. The quality of that hire, because it's so competitive right now. It's really challenging to get talent, to attract talent, and to retain talent in the US, because the job market's been very difficult, especially since the pandemic. It's gotten even tougher since the pandemic. So it's very, very challenging. And we just released a testimonial, we published it last week, of someone that had tried to hire in-house for ISA. And they're like, they couldn't afford, the people they could afford, they were letting go within a matter of weeks. Holy cow, they're just not on it. They're not motivated. They're not interested in the job, right? And when they tried hiring virtual through us, they're like, holy cow, we got a much more talented person and someone that wanted to build a career with them. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. Cost is one factor, but also the quality of hire that small businesses can attract with their offers. Small businesses, right? Real estate are, so almost solopreneurs, very small business owners, right? What kind of talent can they attract and retain? I think that talent gap is getting bigger and bigger all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, us ourselves, we do have in-house and remote, but the in-house to us is still remote because we have a team in TJ, Mexico, right? But there's a small team that kind of manage everybody else from that office, and it's so close to us where we can visit. But I mean, if you're starting out with hiring someone, money may be an issue, do try to find a way to get someone remote, try them out. Again, the pool of applicants and quality of work is going to be a little
Can be
better
huge.
sometimes
Yeah.
for the amount of money that you're paying, right? For the amount of money that you're paying, you're going to get someone who is on it. But again, there's a lot of different things. And maybe this is something that we need to talk about again, Gustavo, maybe next week. If anybody's interested, drop it in the comments. But we could probably describe more or less what the process should be when you're hiring your first virtual assistant, right? What
I
are
love
things,
that. Let's do
right?
it.
Let's
Talk about it
do
next
that.
week.
So anyways, guys, if you have comments, questions, or you do want to, dive deeper into this topic, put it in the comments. We'll be happy to cover those over the next few weeks. All right, Gustavo, have a great day, and I'll see you next week.
All right, man. Thanks.